Wuthering Waves. It's actually been such a long time since I've played this game. But I'm finally back, and with it comes a bunch of new updates that make the game feel like a whole different game. But before we actually get into the game, how about we quickly look at what's new? So with the 2.1 and 2.2 updates, come a whole new bunch of characters as well as 2 companion quests, and it also has some new events as well as a really fun fishing mechanic that feels a lot like Dredge, which I really like honestly. We also get a new main quest, which will be the center focus of this video, as well as a whole new region that's completely upside down. And with a new region comes a new mechanic, which is gravity based. Hopefully it's not as bad as HSR's Dreamscape, because that one almost made me puke. There's also a few other small details, but with that said, let's get into the game. But before that, this video is brought to you by my second channel. So if you enjoy my content and want more, go check it out. But back to the video. So as I launch the game, we go to this viewing area to start the quest. And after talking with Abby for a bit, we went over to another area to find a new character waiting for us. And I cannot lie, I could not contain myself here. I love Giacona so much. She's so playful and adorable. I swear, bards and any musical character hold a special place in my heart. They're my weakness. Also, I'll be mentioning this a lot, but the animation has gotten so good to the point where this doesn't even feel like woo anymore. The fact that all of these are real-time cutscenes is amazing. But going back to the game, she puts us into a trance where we find ourselves back where we first met Carthethia, where as we witness the old memory, Carthethia pops up out of nowhere, and on speaking with her, we find out that her true form has been sealed in an upside down sonorosphere, and that a weird jellyfish woman had been inspecting the seal, possibly to free her. And after the rover gives the most barbarian question of, why not just break the seal? We come out of the sonorosphere in order to help her get out, as well as uncover her origins of whether she's the Thornodians or the Sentinel's Resonator. So we wake up from the sonorosphere, I'm guessing, but we find Giacona worried sick thinking we died. But mere seconds later, she gets sad at the fact that we fell asleep to her song because it wasn't even a lullaby. She truly is a bard. However, we get interrupted by Alfred Pennyworth, who gives us an invitation sent from the matriarch of the Thessalias. Dang, we really are settling all of these families' affairs, huh? But as we make our way there, Carlotta calls us, and being the overprotective mafia woman, she threatens to beat up anyone who tries to get in her way. But we make it to the house, which looks straight out of a Barbie movie. But we meet Cantharella, who is pretty cool, but kind of suspicious. My chat kept telling me to trust her, but I don't. In a way, she offers us a drink as an apology for what Gilberto did. However, since this woman is known for her poison, I did the smart thing and rejected it. But in summary, she mainly called us because she wanted us to help with the current situation with the Sentinel as well as Carthethia. So we make it down the secret basement where we find the actual true form of the Sentinel. As the Sentinel changes his... As the Sentinel changes its appearance after fusing with the Thornodian. I know this is all very complicated and even I'm still a little confused, but just know that the Sentinel is the good guy and the Thornodian is the bad guy. They also have different names, Imperator and Leviathan respectively. So Cantharella tells us how Turban is the only way to get past the seal. So of course we try to pull it out with incredible success. Surprising. So riding this echo, we make it to the seal, where we make it through with ease. But not until we get smacked with a short memory flashback first. These flashbacks are actually pretty significant to the story, as not only do we see it, but also Carthethia and Cantharella. which will also lead to Carthethia remembering her past. So on meeting Carthethia, Cantarella makes her immediately uncomfortable. I still don't trust her. However, Carthethia, having experienced the same flashback we had and understanding the sword's origin, tries to resonate with Turvin and fails, which gets her upset at the fact that she might just be the Threnodian's resonator after all. But after Rover comforts her, we find out that collecting the 3 swords and placing them in their respective pedestals would break the seal. So we place the first sword in, and after being saved by Carthethia, we take out the sword again and make our way outside, and look at this beautiful scenery. It's truly a sight to behold. But as we take an elevator up, we get hit with a very important decision of who to ride the Echo with, since the boat, or Echo in this case, foam, can only hold 2 people. Which I of course went with Carthethia, cause Cantarella still scares me. So after talking about what Cantarella said to her, we get to a water eyes.
A few details if you don't mind.
Feeling nervous?
Of course. The last time I tried to pass it like this...
This scene is so cute. And again, immaculate animation. Anyway, so a long time ago, there was a thing called the Dark Tide. Then there was a second Dark Tide which corrupted various things, including the ones we see here. So in order for us to continue, we have to purify these areas and activate these contraptions in order to move on through. So after getting past that area, we find the very first gravity machine, and it wasn't as bad as I thought. It's definitely not a head-splitting mechanic like that of HSR, but I could be wrong later on. So we reach our destination, and after waiting for Cantarella, she offers us some medicine, which I do not trust. And the fact that they look like Tide Pods don't make it better. So we reach the top of the stairwell, or doorwell? I don't know what it is, but we enter a portal at the top, which brings us to the inverted roof of the same tower. However, after shooting a beam down, we get back and place Turvin into its pedestal to break the first seal. After which we get another cutscene, and again, these illustrations and animations are so amazing and eye-pleasing. I love them. But anyway, the short flashback was mainly just Carthethia being crowned, so moving on. Anyway, after discussing on what they saw as well as the weird frequencies that came from the sword, we rest up for the night, but not before Cantarella gives me a homemade panini sandwich? Yeah, never mind, I gotta trust her now. Look, food is my weakness, okay? If you offered me food, I might just get in your van. And so we move on to the next day, where Cantarella leaves early and takes Turvin with her. After she leaves, we get on foam again and ride around to find the other 2 swords to break the seals. So since these statues were in the wrong place, Rover did the most Rover thing and caused insane infrastructural damage that will probably cost millions of dollars. Good job, man. So as the path gets fixed, we move on where we also find out that the big dragon we fought before, So as the path gets fixed, we move on where we also find out that the big dragon we fought before, Gehinnom, used to be Carthethia's companion before. However, we killed him. But as we got to the next sword, Hogness, we find that it's stuck. So after doing a few more puzzles, we pull it out. And after Rover says the sweetest words of comfort,
As you stay true to yourself, everything will be alright. Doesn't matter if it's the Threnodian or the Sentinel. They don't get to change who you are.
we make it to the next pedestal, where we put Hogness in, breaking the second seal. We then get another cutscene where we find Carthathea fighting back against the Sentinel who was corrupted by the Threnodian, leading to Carthathea remembering her friends which she had lost. But we decide to venture more the next day and take rest for the night. We also offer Carthathea some food, but since she can't eat it, she refuses them. But while resting, we wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of singing coming from high above. So as we fly up to investigate, we find Carthathea, and as we talk to her, she tells us how she wanted to give her friends a proper goodbye as she wasn't able to before. However, she doubts that they'll actually hear it and thinks that she's fooling herself. But Rover comforts her and tells her an experience he had where the dead was able to communicate with a dear friend in a sonorosphere, which put Carthathea at ease, and so she requests for Rover's presence for the night. And in the morning, we get this adorable scene. Like, I think I'm gonna get diabetes from how sweet this is. And again, the animation is so good. But we make it down to Foam again and right on to the next area. While making our way there, Carthathea talks to Cantarella, who hangs up on her. But as we reach a new area, we find a knight named Cadanto, protecting the last sword, Haltier. However, this badass knight was Carthathea's first echo, whom she first acquired after joining the order. But now corrupted, we had to fight him. So after defeating him, we pull out the third sword, but as we try to remove these chains holding up the statue, we find Cadanto again, so we break all the chains, and each time we fight him. And once we broke the last chain and caused another $1 million damage, we make it to a lower section where after moving through this canal, we find Cadanto facing us one last time, protecting the last pedestal and sword, a duty that he carried on even after his corruption. But as we defeat him, he offers himself to us, so that he may fight alongside us for the protection of his master and the Sentinel. Then we reach the final pedestal, slotting in the last and final sword and breaking the seal completely. After which we get a disturbing scene of Carthathea fighting back the Threnodian fused Sentinel, where it told her of how she caused the second Dark Tide. After that, we find that Abby finally feels better, which is a great win for us. I was actually getting really worried for him. I'm so glad. But back to the matter at hand. So with the final fight closing in, Carthathea reveals her past and how she came to be. Before, Fleur-de-Lis and Carthathea were one being. However, after the second Dark Tide and many struggles, she decided to separate herself into Carthathea and Fleur-de-Lis. Carthathea being that part of her that wanted to live on, whilst Fleur-de-Lis being the part that wishes for the doom of the Threnodian, even if it meant her own doom. And this part was also sealed alongside the Threnodian, stuck within her. So we make it to the last area, where Carthathea gives her one last request. With the rover resonating with the Sentinel and gaining the ability of splitting and merging energy, she requests that the consciousness of Fleur-de-Lis to be brought into her body and to merge the two into one again, so that the Threnodian may be stuck in a lifeless body. So as Rover tries to extract the Leviathan out, I presume, I'm still so confused because honestly, this quest was a little difficult to understand. But as Abby struggles to hold the energy, it gets released and presumably joins with Fleur-de-Lis. So with that, the rover defies Carthathea's request and heads off to do things his own way. The good old knuckle sandwich way. And so he leaves to fight or more so, try to extract the Threnodian out of Fleur-de-Lis like how he did with Carthathea. However, as Carthathea lies helplessly, a little someone returns. Cantarella, handing Turvin back, a tinkered version of it, you could say. And as she hands over this weapon, she also talks about how she had made a sacrifice a long time ago, using the power she had gained from the second awakening of the Sentinel and giving it back to the Sentinel so that it could gain conscience in order for the Sentinel to let Carthathea, or more so Fleur-de-Lis, to strike it in its corrupted state. And so she wields the weapon of the Blessed Maiden, and in turn, she too becomes a true Blessed Maiden. As she may be a false one, but that does not mean she can become the true Blessed Maiden. And so she departs to help the rover fend off the Threnodian. So yeah, I definitely owe Cantarella an apology. Look, in my defense, she was acting extremely untrustworthy there, okay? I'm sorry. But anyway, Rover finally steps in to finish the job. I absolutely got owned in this fight. I know I'm supposed to lose, but I lost way too quickly. But lucky for me, Carthathea comes in to save the day with her new weapon molded with her own power. But as her attempt becomes futile, the rover breaks free of the barrier, and as he holds her in his arm, she fades with her frequency fusing with his tacit mark, allowing him to manipulate Arrow. And with this newfound power, we are able to bring the fight to a very close end.
Well done. Seek out a future where I am your blade. We'll find it together. The frequency in her body is already...
Arbiter, despair not, for all is not lost.
And so, with that, we speak with the Imperator to discuss on what happened as well as what is to happen next. And after covering everything we've already covered, it then makes the decision to bring back Carthathea with a sacrifice of its own life. So speaking with Carthathea, she requests to be brought back, fused with Fleur-de-Lis, and all of her terrible memories as she wishes to be whole once more. And with that, she returns back, finally free from the curse. And as they share a sweet moment, another cutscene appears. But it's nothing really new, yada yada yada, Thornodian bad, Fleur-de-Lis fights it off, and then transitions back to the first scene in the fight. But anyway, coming back to the present, Rover and Carthathea have a little banter moment, talking about being stronger and all, but to end off the conversation, she requests Rover to help her out with the new world. And we then go to talk with Cantarella to deliver the news of the Imperator, that from this day forth, you are free. Ending this quest with some tea. I still really hope she doesn't poison. So how do I feel about the new update? Well, I'll say this again. I seriously don't understand how Wuthering Waves keeps on improving bit by bit after each update. It's truly amazing how much work they put in. But anyway, the most notable change has to be the animation and the illustrations. The way they amplified the experience by using really smooth and expressive emotions for the normal cutscenes, and especially the real-time cutscenes, are great. Another thing that got me frozen in shock is the visuals and the structures of the new area. The idea of having an ancient and sacred place suspended in the sky is just so beautiful. Just look at this. The newly implemented mechanic of the gravity machines was also a nice touch. It was really well implemented and didn't hurt my brain or made me want to puke, which is a big plus. And as for the story, it was really amazing. It was calming and soothing. Though it had its moments, it felt really relaxing. One part I especially loved about this quest was the one where Cantarella tells Carthathea that a mere inanimate object should not define her, and how she defied all odds and became the true Blessed Maiden. It really reminded me of Himmel the hero from Frieren, a fighter that wanted nothing but peace for the world, and how even though he could not pull out the hero's sword, he still fought on and paved his own way, not caring about what a mere sword decided for him. And as a result, he became the hero, years before the quote-unquote real hero could arrive. But this quest isn't free of its flaws. One thing that I really struggled with is the actual story. Some parts were quite confusing and the explanations weren't great. It would be really nice if Wuwa made their own explanations on the story to make it easier to understand, and I know that they made their own website summarizing different quests, but there's a lot left to be desired as they really don't go in depth with the explanation. But hey, maybe there's another website or in-game feature I don't know about, or maybe I'm just really dumb to the point where I don't understand the quest. But I just wanted to put that out. Another thing that got me disappointed, which you might not agree with, was Carthathea. She had so much character development, so much importance, even going as far as making her find her true self and going through the whole inanimate object speech to just let her be another damsel in distress at the end. It made me a little bitter. I get that Rover is the MC. I get that they're supposed to be the center of attention and are supposed to be powerful. But it would have been at least nice for Carthathea to have broken the barrier, because you're taking all that built up anticipation that was stored up for 3 hours and you just let her get bashed. So what I'm saying is that having character inclusion and representing them well would be a nicer touch. But you could also argue that Carthathea helped by giving Rover aerial abilities, but hey, that's just my opinion. It was a little disappointing to say the least. However, other than that, I don't really have any complaints. I loved everything that they added. The events are cool and I especially love the fishing mechanic. Yeah, I've just been fishing. But with that, I rate it an 8 out of 10. Anyways, bye.